Please. Wayne's told me we're about to go live streaming, so I suppose I'm going to go making a forum. Yes, thank you for being here today, guys. Yeah, I have obviously we've had committee time and a chance just to check. One thing I did express, and I would like to say publicly, was my appreciation for the quality of papers. I actually think they're improving. Can I say that? Right, yeah. My first thing I came to, all I was going to do was to approve the policy, and actually we're starting to get some of the sorts of information that is really helpful from a more overall risk governance position. So I don't want to take the head off development here, but I am very grateful for the position we're in today. It's going to give rise to a good discussion. Folks, we do have a bit to get through, and as we discussed, we can set here, there is also a workshop at the end with our insurance brokers, Aon, which I think will be important. Insurance is always an exercise in risk governance and management, and that's why actually as a committee we should be deeply engaged in our strategy around placement of insurance. So that's, we've got Elaine, I think we've also got Hannah McDonald, who is the local government relations, whatever person for Aon across the country speaking to us. So, so with that, perhaps we should start with the business apologies. I have one from Tim, Neil, and Neil, Steve, and just to acknowledge you've got to go at 11, so I'll just change the agenda a tad, and we'll come back to that. Anything else? Everybody else can stay. Hopefully, others can stay because I need you other two to be here. Okay, so look, I'll move from the chair to accept Tim and Neil's. Thank you, Tana. Put the motion away. Please say aye. Aye. Those against, character. Sarah, you welcome you, by the way. Sorry, but it's not an apologies because it's actually not the right place. But it's great to have you here as well. So I hope you enjoy the meeting, and we look forward. Yes, be very keen for you to feel free and open to contribute fully to the conversation as well. Which is yes. I haven't been informed of any public forum or participation. So we move to the minutes of 8 March, which was when we last met. I'll move from the chair. We take them as a true and correct record. I've seen the thank Tamar. You're going to have to be fast to the door here. Yeah, Tracy. Do they look like the meeting we were in? People, they were. Yeah. It might have been the old typo, but look, I'll have a look at that Saskia, but I think I saw one, we were missing a couple of words, but I don't feel like we should hold ourselves up. So I'm comfortable that that was the real recording we're at. I'll put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Declarations of interest. Is there anybody coming up on the agenda that you need to know your interest for? Probably should include you on this one, Sarah.
Yes, I contract to SA Studio, who are the partner architect contractor to Gasmax. We have a contract in place between them there's a privacy clause in there that I can't be in the same building as them, so there's no crossover, but I do contracts to an agent that works alongside them. So
right, thank you.
Just so we can aware of that.
Thank you very much. Wayne, I do owe you an updated sheet. Oh, yeah. Believe it or not, a couple of drops off, actually 3 have dropped off my list, but I've added 1 to it, so there we go. None of it relates to, I think, any of the matters we have in front of us or foreseeably for the council. Okay, so look, thank you for that. We just note Sarah's comments there, please, Wayne. That's fine in terms of taking that further. Now, that gets us into the substantive part of our meeting, and the first item is on page 20, which is our Capex reports. So who's looking down the line? It's some unfamiliar faces. I'm sorry, I'm Bruce Robertson, by the way. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Keenan, the Capital Projects Program Manager.
Great, Patrick.
So
welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. I'm across the Cromwell Rising Main and Cromwell Water Treatment Upgrade status reports. And I had peripheral involvement with the fire heritage upgrade.
Yeah.
So I can help a bit there with updates or questions if necessary. Yeah, these reports went up
So,
to,
well, Patrick, it's going to, normally I just think we go for it. I just want to indicate, Wayne indicated me that he's responded, Patrick, to a wee bit of demand from me as to where we go. And this is one paper which I'm very grateful we've got this. I'm also looking for more. And from again, we just checked, we had Saskia in before you guys came in. Now, ultimately, I'll be looking for a report which gives us a sense of the entire planned capital program for the year. How much do we plan to spend for the coming, how much we plan to spend each year? So how much we plan to spend this year? 30 million.
and 3 quarters is about 30 million.
Yeah, wouldn't and the rest?
Oh, I think it's closer to 70.
70, well, there we go. Well, we were there. It's a, here we are. We saw a bunch of councillors. We thought it was 30. So 70 million. I'll be interested as we go through about the total $70 million program. And actually, are we in a position to achieve that in the rest of the year? We'll monitor that. That's the first phase, and that's relevant for us because it actually ties in both with the infrastructure strategy that is set through the LTP, but also important to the financial strategy. And for instance, the debt position we hold is heavily influenced by whether we are or we're not achieving that. But actually, I'm also interested in the services. So I am very interested in presuming that the Capex program means if we've set it right, we're going to be got our annual portion of renewals, which we must achieve. Otherwise, we get potholes. So I'm very interested in the qualitative nature of what we are achieving. So that's overall, and don't worry, Saskia, this is not a criticism, because actually I like this as well. And that's actually the sense of the big projects, and or particularly projects which have risk, particularly statements of a high or a significant element attached to it. Now, I'm not suggesting these are those, but it could well be given the nature of those programs. So I'm looking for that wee bit of shift in the way we look at it. But this is a really good start, Patrick. So I'm going to be really happy to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, but I think you just had a little bit, Bruce, on exactly what projects, because obviously we have some smaller ones that make up the Capex program, and we've delivered the ones Patrick and Gareth are going to deliver today, like this as a dashboard. But are you wanting a more report?
Yeah, look, I think
you want to see more of this, or
no, actually, potentially, what I'm looking for is a different report. Okay, which I haven't necessarily expressed that well prior to this meeting, but I would be looking for. We've got a $70 million program. Where are we at in the life cycle of development of those projects? So I don't know how many projects we've got in 70 million. Let's argue there's 50, well, let's argue there's 30, I don't know, 30 or 50 projects that make up the total $70 million program. I want to have a sense of where they are in those key gates or milestones in terms of their planning, commissioning, and actual in other words, it's just to see it's through the life cycle of their construct, and then we've got a build for being $70 million objective. I do believe that actually, if there are projects which have and I'm using the word slightly in a risk basis, high risk, and you've got these dashboards are great. We actually, as a committee, should be aware of those. There's also a third option, which is that actually council might request we look particularly at a particular project, which is fine as well. We do that too. So this is, as I say, a good start, Patrick. So I'm and I've got no trouble with it. At least I looked at it.
No, that's a really good few points you're making, because we've discussed also at the last council meeting when we did these, is we'd quite like some feedback on where you see the threshold for individual projects Obviously, it feels like at the moment they're talking about a $3 million threshold, but that report on that. However, if it's at a high, it could be less than that, but high organisational risk or stakeholder risk, that you report on those at an individual level. And we've been working with Peter on that and getting, he's not here, but getting. Getting to a level obviously where you want a program or an overall annual plan detail, so that's a different type of report.
Exactly.
So at this stage, we're improving our reporting. I think it's really good. Some areas of the organisation are able to produce these a lot easier than others for various reasons, but yeah, we probably need some feedback. It's good that you're saying that.
Yeah, so I mean, outside this meeting, Patrick, I can give you in Louise and Saskia some examples from around the country for risk committees I chair would be to get sort of information I'm talking about, which will characterise and demonstrate the sort of information. I don't have any trouble with, obviously it's our public agenda. What I'm used to is that overall, let's say the $70 million program, milestone achievement where we at being public, and I'm often used, well, certainly for projects with high or extreme risk to have them PM. So I'm comfortable to take that one forward, but I'll certainly outside the meeting give you at least a good example of how I think that would be helpful for the committee. And I want to stress, Louise and Patrick, what I'm doing is partly that's important. So right. For both the service element, but actually also for the financial risk element, which is one of the areas which the committee should have a bit of a view over. So we'll be able to go forward. So look, that's taken a lot more than I anticipated. But now, Patrick, can I suggest you might like to take us through this, because they are very interesting and good reports.
Well, I suppose,
appreciate that.
And that's the thing. I'll take the reports as read. They speak for themselves, but like the council meeting we had recently, I would quite like any feedback from elected members or yourself on how we could improve these as we go, because it's a bit of an iterative process. We want to get better as we go. I think we've got a good standard at the moment, but if there were any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them rather than through the whole thing.
So I'll open up for the meeting. Would Tracy Turner have any questions you'd like to ask Patrick? And sorry, it was Barris, isn't it? Gareth. Okay, sorry.
I just wondered, and there's going to be really obvious. I can understand what the little green boxes with the G and the A and all that, but if you are reading through from the public, there's no legend to say what they mean.
Yeah, that came up at the council meeting too, so we can have things on that's fine.
Yeah.
Green and the red, what does that mean? Yep.
Yeah, this is read as
No, that's fair
obvious,
enough.
pay attention, but yeah.
And that's the thing, sometimes we assume that people understand some of this vernacular or whatever, so that's all good.
Just, look, I think that we've got a while possession. We've got them in separate papers. I read it still, it's very much by the way. So if there's any questions, look, in fact, I this morning drove past the Memorial Hall, or what was the Memorial Hall of the Dark, because I was interested just to see what was happening there. I went to how many decades ago, it was last year I was in that hall. And I was just interested in the situation. It's obviously one where you are indicating a level of risk, particularly around asbestos, and you've even included some downstream action that you're taking with the original assessor. Is there anything you want to add for the risk committee as far as that's concerned? Because primarily it's financial risk now, is that right? To the total project?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, there was contingencies put into place regardless. So we're mitigating that, and that was that's all been dealt with. And I think the last piece of the puzzle of that is actually removing the soil that's got the contamination in it.
Yeah.
The team are just looking at what's going to be the most viable solution. So whether to take it 250 down to 300 and make sure we've got everything in, don't have to dig again.
Yeah.
And then everything gets shipped off to landfill. The final reports come through to me, and then we will take our findings to the previous companies that did all the stuff, and we'll have a conversation with them and see how we move forward with that.
So, yes, I saw that phrase, all that conversation. So appreciate that. when do you release the contingency? What's your approach to doing this?
So contingencies are available upfront, and in a construction project in this nature, you usually spend between 60 and 70% of your contingency within the first 6 months, because you're taking care of all the unknown factors that are moving. We've been pretty diligent. We actually really good on track. We've got a very high level of fixed price contract in this one, and all the unknowns are being dealt with up front here. So I think to date, we've probably spent about $150,000 out of the $2 million contingency. So we're well within our markets. There's no alarm bells at this stage.
The accountant will be see us release that contingency with great slowness, but that's another story. The question becomes, should we be trying to find efficiencies in the pre-contingency budget?
Absolutely, and you can see in the report, we don't want to spend the contingency.
Yeah.
So as much as we can mitigate the stuffs up front, then we get into surety, because the rest of the contract is fixed price.
And I don't think I saw particularly from the but timeline wise, this is overly holding the place up, the project up. No.
No, we had initially put in about 3 weeks turnaround time for the asbestos, and then we're sitting at 3 weeks and a couple of days. Pretty good.
One other question I had, which always interests me, because again, later on we'll consider our safety report, but it's a key part of the total, I guess, should we say, onboarding of this project. I mean, you've got obviously a recognised contractor and made up there, but I mean, a lot of other contractors presumably on site as well.
Yeah.
We've gone from amber, I don't know why it was amber, that doesn't matter, and we're now green. So things are going well from a health and safety.
100%. So we've got all the, I don't like to call them tick boxes, because effectively we do our due diligence, but basically we have gone through a full step program for the health and safety.
Yeah.
We've achieved all of our goals, and we've put in our factors in place to keep those controls in place.
Right, that'd be good. Probably when we get to the more broader view about how we're going against our $70 million program, I'd be interested to probably perhaps in another meeting talk a bit more about the project management approach that we take within CADC. There's not here, by the way, it's alarm goes for me, but again, I think again for the benefit of the committee to understand how we generally mitigate, or how we actually achieve our goals. So mitigate risk, so that's great. I was reasonably, well, actually, no, the one project that I think I saw that did have red, get it right here, is the this one. Yes, thank you. Thank you. You've got it. Now that's, well, I think the only one that we have got a red on. I just wonder if there's any comments people like making that. That's the redesign from original plan, scope and design significantly overspent.
So this fits with Quentin Peniel, who's away, and Dan Kirkman was going to step in. He's also away, so you've got me, I'm afraid, Bruce.
Okay,
So I can't comment more than what is on there. But I certainly will get some more detail on that.
There was a little bit of redesign happened after unhappy feedback from some shop owners and business owners around parking, and some parks were retained that were going to have been removed.
Yes, there is that. And also when we looked at the whole project, including the pipe renewal, the business owners said, we don't, because of disruption, we don't necessarily want you in there replacing stuff that doesn't need replacing. So we've actually pulled that back somewhat. And one of the risks in this one is actually around reputational risk with the businesses, and we hear from them regularly around the effects of the street closure on their business. We've heard about the curbing type we've used, traffic management, cones, and there's a lot of engagement with that community just to keep it.
Lots of complaints about the contractors there doing the work.
Yeah, so they've had a this has been ongoing Bruce, so that we're trying to work the closure through winter, so we're now closed. The pipe renewals are 3-month period, the street is now closed for that period. Some of the businesses are closed in winter, so we're trying to work with them so that their summer isn't disrupted, which actually stretches the project and makes them a little bit more dissatisfied. So we said, which way do you want it? And we went for the winter closure and stretching out the time. But yeah, that's right, Tamer, we redesigned to cause less disruption, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's useful. I mean, the reason you put that on is that we have strong feedback from businesses, which go with this. So, the method approach to dealing with it tends to be critical. Any other issues, both for either the Cromwell rising main or the water treatment plant upgrade, Signate for Salter Street is or soil condition. It's probably not, I shouldn't be too worried about it. Anything that folks would like to raise about this one, Patrick? Because I think you said this was your two areas that you want to raise.
No.
No, that's good.
Those things. Yeah.
There was maybe just a couple of comments that come out from the public about that as well, around when you've just done the work, why are you digging stuff up again? Around that reputational side of things, just with people, I guess the comms plan of how it's communicated to communities that see a piece of work being finished and then.
Well, one was an NZTA project.
Yeah.
And there was a clash with that. We worked with NZTA when we were doing investigation and design of the Cromwell Rising Main. And that's why we put a conduit under State Highway 8B while they were there. So we worked in together with them there. But there were elements of the scope that they weren't prepared to hold back, such as the landscaping and so forth around the roundabout. So,
I appreciate it.
But
If you're a member of the public driving past each day and you see the landscaping's all been done and 3 months later it's been dug up again,
But all I can say is council staff and teams are very proactive with NZTA and working on that. And it is what it is now.
Yeah.
Our project team have undone that landscaping. They've formed topsoil up on a hill beside a gravel road and have replanted all that stuff. Once the pipeline's through, they'll come back and lay it again. But it's not a major exercise. Obviously, perception-wise, it doesn't look good, but we're mitigating as best as we can.
And we're really aware of the comms around this sort of thing and improving how we communicate, because sometimes it is a perception thing. If we can put it to bed, then that's what we try and do.
It also talks about you can never underestimate the need in terms of your relationships with the other players in the paddock, which in this case is the NZTA. I hear your point that they are just going to go ahead and get this done, and I won't comment to that, but otherwise I hear it. So I'd like to try and deal with 24.2.2 through 3, I think, which gives us those 4, is it? And
Sorry, can I just ask a question?
oh, sorry, Tracy.
That's right. In the Cromwell Hall, this is on page 23, why does in the total funding and the funding actions, and I just couldn't work out why the shortfall of 13.42 was by lending, and then the lending was 15.6. What's the difference?
So, unfortunately,
So yeah, so
part of the
page 23, you've got the shortfall of lending, 13.42, and then the next line underneath says 15.6 for the long-term plan. Why is there a difference when there's a shortfall? Like, why was the lending different from what the shortfall was?
So the top part of this is what we've secured.
Yeah.
And then the bottom part is assumption based. So what we think we might be getting out of external funders. So because that is an unknown quantum, we don't know what that shortfall will be at this stage. So as an example, if one of the funders gave us $10 million, then that shortfall would only be $3 million. Basically. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So, and we've changed this up now from a little bit of feedback from the rest of the committee. So we'll only be reporting on the actual funding that we've secured. So it'll give a much clearer picture.
Okay.
So yeah, this Tracy, I mean, I think you got a point here. But when I read it, I took that actually, in effect, we have planned funding for this
But our backstop is that we'll lead.
Correct.
And the total amount that we lead will depend on what strikes me most there is assumption above is that actually can we deliver on that? So again, this comes back to my interest, like Tracy and Tamo, we were talking before the meeting started about my interest about our financial strategy. But actually achieving $6.7 million in net sales or achieving the applications to the various funds is critical. So we'll achieving our financial strategy. Otherwise, our 13, our 15, whatever number it is, if we're going to have to borrow, is an impost on us. And at the moment, you look at a Treasury Report, you go to the market when your average cost of borrowing is 6.07%. And so it becomes really important that we integrate our development with our funding. And that's one Friday area for us to be interested for us in that case.
And just through the chair, sorry, I did make a very good guess, and my colleagues as well, but it's 69.5 million. That the Capex firms.
Yeah, it's the interesting to see. We'll be keen to see how they go relative to everything. Tracy, sorry, were you happy with that?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit of a half answer at the moment, so us
Yeah.
we firmed up as some of those top lines start to come up.
I guess with the, just on in relation to what Taylor said at the start, with the green, amber and red, I guess it'd be really good to have a bit of an explanation as to at what point does alarm bells start ringing? Is it maybe not alarm bells, that might not be right, but at what point do you guys say, okay, well, if it gets to amber and we need to, we're looking close, we're looking, at what point, just so that we're really clear on what that actually means in practice.
Yeah, well, what we're doing to mitigate it.
Yeah.
Because if the risk, and I don't want to get too project managing technical, but if a risk actually comes to fruition, it's then an issue.
Yeah.
So it's then an issue that you've actually got to deal with. And what are we going to do to make sure that this issue doesn't become a major threat to our financing or so forth, or health and safety or whatever, or environment, whatever it might be. But it's about you guys keeping an eye on, okay, well, if for the next report, it's still red, then what are you actually doing about this risk? Is it just a lingering one that's always going to be there because it's such a high, if it happens, the consequences quite a large impact, so you've got to keep it there. But it's you guys building confidence around us mitigating those issues, risks before they become an issue. Yeah.
Can I just jump in there quickly? On the reports and milestones. So if you take the milestones and relate it up to your time frames, and when we're coming back to report, we're not hitting those milestones. So you'll see the embers and the red start coming into play.
Yeah.
And then we will be talking about justifications or solutions on what that looks like. So and the reason we've got milestones is we're not going to get to the end and then say we have red flags from all the way over here. It's a staged approach as you're going through this project.
So if we took the, sorry to lay this point, just so I'm clear, if we took the asbestos situation as a single milestone, it's green when you start the project because you're moving forward essentially, and then because you had identified something more, it turned into amber.
Correct.
And then once you've dealt with it, it goes back to green.
Absolutely. And if it turned out that, for argument's sake, the site was completely contaminated, and you'd have to dig a 4-foot hole size of whatever, then we're going to red.
Yeah.
We'll be coming back and going, so we're exceeding budgets, we're doing this, and then we actually start asking the question, do we move ahead with this project or not? Because then it changes the finances.
Cool. Thank you.
Just on that, Lydia, I see the agency that undertook the previous site visit has done other properties of ours. Do you anticipate that any will be captured? Are there any other risk properties that you're looking at that they've done the surveys around asbestos?
Yeah.
That might not be right.
That's 100%. And that's part of the conversation that we're going to be having. And unfortunately, with this sort of caliber, we have a duty of care to get website involved as well. So I just want to make sure I've got all my ducks in a row, all the reports, everything before we start having that conversation. Okay.
Is this, I notice, that we approved this program, which is fine. So do we have a steering group that sits over of management that sits over the top of this project or program?
So we've got, we've got quite a, initially when we went through the design, we went through a project advisory group. But basically our steering group is the council, because it's because of the nature of the spend, it's become a council thing, but it's board and council.
Okay.
We, if I can cut in there, through the chair, we did have a, capital works project advised, no, what were they called?
No, we used to have a project governance group,
Yeah.
which is just finished now.
Mm.
And I think Peter decided with discussions with the mayor and other staff that if we're reporting these things up to council and up to risk and audit regularly, then that may be enough.
Yeah.
That's something to discuss with Peter, I suppose, but.
Yeah, I'm just interested, Louise, because I think you've got responsibility also for the funding as well.
So, and I think that the reason why that, group is no longer is because it was considered that there was just a few people with some understanding rather than the whole council. And the project was a significance that the full council had to be over.
We talked about that community board, yeah, it was, the people and where they sat, they were largely through this council. So it was more advisable to the board as well.
It's been a very valuable discussion. If it's okay with me, so I would like to move on. So we have got those 3 pages, and it is that we've received from the side of that. Do you plan enough? Well, let's make it Tracy. She actually put a hand up, mate. She actually put a hand up. Put the motion for those 3 pages. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, thank you. Gareth, thank you very much for this. That's really, really helpful. It's been useful. I'm very keen that we explore further how we support the youth with and Louise as well. Sorry, that's very keen to the city. So thank you for being here and the set information. It's very helpful. Thank you. I just want to change our agenda. I'm just conscious that I'm Dusky get away. So I'd like us to Wayne, I'm sorry, I'll change this for you. I'd like to go to item 6 next, which is the Treasury Report, and then we'll deal with the audit and internal audit update. It's a sensitivity got to go on. So you've got to be away, and then we'll be, So we do all that and come back to the other stuff after that, if that's okay. So, sorry, stay there. It's not to see a smiling face at the far end. So can we deal firstly with the Treasury Report, please? Saskia, can take it from you.
Thank you very much and good morning, members. So we have our second formal presentation of our Treasury report. There's really nothing really new in this. We haven't drawn down any further debt, so that remains at 25 million. I suppose really the big update in there is that council has approved us entering into the swap rate agreement. So that's going to enable us to become compliant with the policy. So that's really good. So where that's at is we're still just waiting on the final agreement from National Australia Bank. And that will come hopefully very soon. We are going to give BNZ a chaser today to get that facility in place. And only other really thing, there is quite a good commentary from our bank advisor there around what's sort of happening globally and at the national level, and it's a little bit volatile at the moment. So yes, over to any questions from the committee.
Great. Good questions. Sorry, I'm just writing a small amendment to the proposed resolution, but that's not the end of it. Okay, so Tracy and Tamar, I'm always interested in looking at the broader prudential controls that we have in place. And I look particularly at pages 49 and 50, which reflect probably the key issues and risks for us as we go forward. So let's look at the maturity profile. Well, actually, I'll look at that bottom right-hand box first and foremost. The cost of funds is 6.07%. That's a big number, but it also reflects probably correct.
Does, yes.
I mean, a more council was probably longer holding debt would have you know, well, I think I was doing the council where high 3% for our cost of funds, but that reflects our debt was taken out substantially earlier and at a different stage, which we've been able to check, whereas if I thought correctly, our debt's more recent. So we have been subject to the current rates.
And one of the reasons behind our non-compliance in that 2 to 4 year band is because we didn't purposely want to, at these high interest rates, to be locking ourselves into 4 years.
Sure.
So what we have been doing is like just rolled over some debt on 3 months and just hoping the rates are going to start coming down. So and I know we need to fix our non-compliance, but some of that is a wee bit strategic at the moment as well to try and get the best rates for us.
Yeah. So we've got, you know, there is a level to which we have to have a range of mixed instruments and invest to try and manage our risk. We don't want to lock ourselves in 6%, but equally we don't want to pay some spot rates necessarily. The second thing I look at here is when does our debt fall due? So the graph at the top left is interests me that actually we've got a breather, haven't we? In 2025, we're not renewing any debt. Now we might be taking on more debt, but we're not renewing the existing debt, which is partly going back to your strategy.
Yes.
Saskia, that hopefully, well, you know, the OCR coming down, they say not this year, but in 2025, that gives us a chance to actually see those rates come down before we have to renew in 2026.
And what we will see with some of our lending there of 10 million in the 2024 current year, given that we are taking a strategy of the short term at the moment, we will see some of that debt come fall in 2025. And by the end, as Bruce said, hopefully then the rates will start to come down and we'll start looking at longer terms there.
And I think, I mean, we could even have other strategies, which is some councils might, if rates became suddenly really advantageous in 2025, we pre-fund some of that retiring debt in 2026, but that's another story which we probably shouldn't go into at this point.
Can I just start quickly with the, in that same page, the liquidity ratio, the box above the cost of funds? Should that, the percent, is it still $1 or is it should be just a percentage number?
Oh, yes, thank you. Should be a percentage.
Yeah.
Percent.
I thought that was the case, I just thought I'd better.
If it was only dollars, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
If it was the bank last night, I automatically read percent, so what up. So the next thing I do is clearly, what's critical on that page 49 is exactly what Saskia's been saying, which is that actually our interest rate cover is out of policy, which is shown on the graph on the next page, page 50, and that top left-hand corner, and you can see in 28, that gap between the blue and the. So that does mean we're exposed in a greater sense to the volatility of the interest rate market than we anticipate. But effectively, you're saying, Miles reflected this at our last meeting. We're trying to see some hope for reduction, but we're going to have to deal with that when you're in that process, so that's fine.
And we're not really badly non-compliant. I know we are, it's agreed. So if when we calculate the debt that we've got falling within the 2 to 4 years, we have 5 million of that falling off for the 4-year period. So essentially that takes us down to 20%. So we, but as Bruce points out, we are a bit exposed there, but it's not like we're at zero. So, but we do need to address that, and hopefully with that agreement, Bruce, so we can manage that for our bank.
Thank you. So that's up to Clemmer, Tracy, if you're comfortable. Wayne, I just would like, I just would like to suggest that we just reword the resolution, which is that we receive the report, or the report be received, and note the mitigations being taken to address the interest rate cover on compliance. And we note the mitigations being taken to mitigate, to reduce. What do I say? Sorry.
To mitigate the non.
Yeah, to mitigate the interest rate cover on compliance. So I just want, it's important as the committee, it ultimately goes to council that they're aware that we are aware of non-compliance, because technically it's outside what we consider prudent. We understand the reasons why. But I would actually, chair, who's going to go for this? You are, Tracy. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Right, if we could then jump down to item 13, which I think is page 123. Yeah, goes the old number there. Wayne, that's good, which is the Audit New Zealand internal audit update. So, Steve, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll deal with the internal audit program first now as a second item in the paper. So you'll recall that we did have a draft report from Deloitte. At that time, when ELT reviewed it, we felt that it wasn't quite maybe addressing areas of greatest risk. And since then, we have subsequently completely redone our risk register with the great help of the media. So we've had a really good conversation with Deloitte around just really refreshing that. So there is a draft proposal which will involve the chair of audit risk and a bit of an interview, just to go through, and members of the executive team as well, just to go through and refresh that. So that should be well and truly progressed by your next meeting. So that's the update on that item. Now, our external audit program, I'm happy to report that we finally do have a final report. So I'll give one to hand that to members. And I'm aware that you haven't seen this, so I thought I'd just talk through a couple of pages once everybody has it. And obviously really happy outside of the committee meeting, some questions once we've had a chance to read this information. So first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is on page 4. The bottom here, 1.1, new recommendations. So we do have, and I'll talk more about these in a moment, we have 4 new recommendations that have come from the audit. So it's not unusual to have that number, but I will talk through what the issues that they saw and what they're going to do about them. A really good outcome though, 1.2 over the page, on page 5. We have closed out, since the last audit, we have managed to close out a few recommendations there. So 5 have been closed out. So we are leading away on the recommendations that have come. So if we all turn to page 14, and I'll just talk you through the main issues that audit was concerned about. Right, this first one, 5.1, performance reporting control. So this was an error on our behalf. What unfortunately happened, and it was an administrative error, is that we had pulled through some of our performance measures from an old report, and it wasn't the long-term plan measures. So the annual plan should always report against your current long-term plan measures. So we're left in this little bit of a tricky position that we had other measures in there that weren't in our long-term plan. So that was quite accurately pointed out by Wellbeing New Zealand that it shouldn't happen. So we have now a practice in place that we are double checking the performance measures. In fact, I've got a little posting on my screen at my desk to go through and check the ones for this annual plan before we bring that back to council on the 26th of June. So yes, notify staff and then what's in the room. So that's 5.1. 5.2, and we have Julie Muir, who is across this. Unfortunately, she can't be here at the meeting today. So what Audit New Zealand were concerned about was that Three Waters assets weren't getting reported fast enough into our ascetic system. And it was a timing issue on our behalf. So you see down below there, the management comment, there's a timing issue related to project completion date, and getting required information from the contractor was a problem. So we have noted Audit New Zealand's concerns around timeliness of this, and we'll endeavour to do our best, but some of that was related to contractor information availability. But we will note that going forward and do our best to put that in a more timely manner. So that was the second key thing they pulled up. If we turn over the page to page 16, water connection report. So this is needed for our performance, reporting. And, Audit New Zealand were concerned about that the time that the report was pulled, in the system, that it didn't actually report on the reporting timeframe, so that there was potentially missed. So, with Nathan's help, what we are going to do is ensure that we have this run at the right time. So we'll work on that to the next audit. So that one should, with that going well, this coming financial year, we should see that one closed out when we get this report next year. And the final one there, 5.4. Now this is an ongoing issue. It has been on a couple of our audits around the reconciliation of the fixed asset register. This is as a priority on the finance work program, and we acknowledge and accept this recommendation, and we are hoping to get this done in the second part of this year. We have obviously not got it done in time for this report, and we are not 100% sure if we'll get it sorted before we have to do the annual report, which is in October, but it is high priority on the work program. So the other 4 key things that have been pointed out, and I know that you've just seen this and I've just thrown it all at you. Any questions at this stage from members?
Just a couple of comments from the SESC, so firstly, the committee members, I've had a chance to see this earlier than today. I think you gave me a cipher on a version prior, which had some initial management comments, but not these finalised ones. So I'm certainly comforted that you have taken the time, Saskia, to actually work with Audit New Zealand to reach the final position. So I'm set the fact that we have got the late paper problem. And in fact, you're dealing with a couple of comments I'd just like to make and observations. You haven't focused on page 13. I think actually as a governance committee, we should. It's good news. The auditor does look at 2 things, which are important. One is sort of overall control environment. What's the shape, feel, dare I say, even culture of Central Targeted Council? Do we have the right sort of approach to control? Now, that's a big topic, and you could never get an auditor to say everything is tickety-boo. They will never give you 100% assurance. But we do have what they call as negative assurance. So they say no matters have come to our attention that we consider would affect the culture. That's actually not a bad standard to meet, given they come into a lot of financial statements, don't look at everything. They are actually expressing confidence that we have a culture of honesty and ethical behaviour, and what is appropriate for general control inside the organisation. So I don't think we should flick past that one without noting that, Saskia, and well done management that you're doing. I hope actually members that we actually are also part of trying to encourage good culture here as well, in terms of behaviour and control. And then also the controls, and maybe they tend to do this focusing on the financial statements, and each systems is the second last paragraph on the page, capable of collectively preventing or protecting and correcting material statements. So they have given us some recommendations around things like your asset register doesn't tie up with your financials in a better. And I'm also saying, Saskia, it better, but it's the fact that they're saying, well, as far as they can see from their observations, our controls are such that materially, and that means it doesn't affect a reader's view of our performance, we can adequately. So it's not to be taken for granted, albeit I expect it annually. So we've got what I expect, but actually I'm sort of grateful that it's there. So that's great. The other thing I'd ask Saskia is, and members, I'll point us to page 23 and 24. If you can see my fingers on that one. We actually also had some open recommendations, and I make a level of assumption that while they over the first 2 no progress, that you you've got them on your she can.
Yes, right.
Confirm that for me.
Yes, 100%. So for example, the one down there at the bottom system, password transaction agency, I think we can talk to that, that's one of truly,
Yes, I
in
get
play.
to see that we can later.
Yeah, so,
As
yes,
with all the sensitive expenditure.
yeah,
So that SF one remains a difficult one.
it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that it's reflecting both internal systems around our tidy up of data in terms of the reconciliation, but it also means that at the end of a project, we have to have a hell of a good relationship with our contractors to get the right asset information provides now. What used to be in the old days called as-builds, so that we actually have them on a timely basis to get them into our fixed asset register. Okay, it's good. So that's really helpful. Tracy?
I did have one question. There's been some challenges over the last few years in terms of the professional working relationship between CBDC and Audit, and I wondered if there were improvements happening or still challenging.
So we had quite a recent, really good meeting with Chantal, our director, around the switch to end-to-end and what that means for LTP coming up. And we did invite Chantal here today. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it, so we will endeavour to do our best to get Chantal here to the next meetings. I think it's quite important, that relationship with the committee as well. But yeah, definitely improving, which has been really good. The really good thing coming out of that meeting, one of the challenges Audit New Zealand have had, like many of us, has been resourcing, and that was particularly challenging in this last audit because they had staff swapped out all over the place, and we didn't have continuity, and we did have some of our staff being asked the same thing by different people, so they now have a full team in place. So I'm really looking forward to seeing improvements with this audit that we're about to spring into very soon. Yeah.
So Tana, I'm comfortable with what Saskia said, but I've asked Saskia to renew an invitation to Chantal, or if she can make her manager to be present. Zooming's fine from my perspective. But this would have been a normal situation where at the end of an audit, we should have been probably getting any meeting, we should have committee only time with our auditor without management here. We haven't had the chance today, and I suspect I would be keen that we can get Chantal here. We will. I alluded to the fact that I've picked up the responsibility for chairing the risk committee at Christchurch City. She happens to be the appointed auditor for Christchurch City, so she hasn't escaped my clutches yet, so I'll get it here. Can I suggest, sorry, Tracy and Sarah, were the questions that you had that you wanted to ask Saskia at this point? Can I just ask, again, I'm wanting to change the resolution slightly, given we have received the paper. I think that the report be received, including the tabled Audit New Zealand report on what they call it, the year ended 30 June 20. We won't lose the paper. We will give Chantal, then we get a time with her alone, but a chance if there are any further questions. But I would like to encourage committee members of the Treasury a chance to read this. If you actually have other questions you want to ask, please get hold of Saskia, because they should be answered. So we have a motion. I've got a motion there. Looks like change way. I think that makes sense. Who's going? Thank you, Taylor. That is good. I could see that. I was looking Tracy's way. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carry. That's great. Thank you for that. That's really good. Right, now we can come back to the policy and strategy register. Very interested in this, and I'm now starting to get a stronger sense of direction of travel. So this is really good. So I think lead us through it.
Yeah, my name. Yeah, you did ask some questions at the last meeting, and apologies I wasn't there. I had COVID, and Dylan was away as well. So I'd like to start by answering your question from last time for me about what we report and why, and how it looks and where it's going. So policy is quite a young function. It's actually by the District Council. I think I'm the second policy officer, So initially, our focus has really been on this policy and strategy register and meeting that audited target of 80%. That's why it's reported the way it is. And you'll see we've got a new metric we've added recently, and that's the life of a policy. And that's designed to tackle not having policies out of date for too long. The theory behind that being if a policy review is hard, there's become a divergence from normal practice. So the lower that is, the closer policy is probably to how it's working. It's currently sitting at 1,063 days. My estimate is at the next meeting we'll have shaved about 1,000 days off that. I've just calculated here, I've got 1,600 days to be removed from it, but then there's days to be added to it. So what we do at the moment is I bring you a mandatory document report. It used to be called the Legislative Compliance Report. It came up on the 12th of December, and that lists what policies should be in place from a legal perspective. The goal of that is always to the best of our ability. And at this stage, we've seen to really cracked that one. We've done a review yearly. I think it's had 3 reviews now. We update the legislation, we check our actions against it. But as far as we can tell, we've done what we say we should in terms of the things we have to have. The current work items based on that is including those 17A reviews and a lot of the work in the health and safety space. So the next steps beyond that is, So in those, when you ask the question, what's out of date that we need to know? Currently, probably the only real one that has consequences for being out of date is the gambling policy. But the act behind that gives us 2 years to review the policy, and it's going to be on the July Council agenda. It's actually been ready for a while, but I just have a nagging question about the rate of return from societies versus the grants given. That I've just sent an official information request to Tony Whenua. So that's going to take the length of that to get that information back to finalise that report and have it up. Other than that, in terms of mandatory documents, we're good. So the next category is the enabling actions, and that's the pieces of policy we put in place in order to let us do things. That's the next cab off the rank. There are a few probably more in that compliance space that we're working on at the moment, the main one being the road policy. And then there's a little bit of work in the trading public places space that we're on as well. Beyond that, the next few steps we will evolve to is increasing the transparency and accountability. So not just our auditors, but our community can see what and why we do, and the efficiency, and then the processes and procedures that sit under that. So at the moment, what I do is once a year, I bring you the mandatory documents, and as it evolves, you'll start to see more of that in it. And in every meeting, I bring you what's changed. So that long answer to the short question, we're now sitting at 89.52%. We're audited on 80%. This committee has asked us to aim for 90%. So we're sort of tracking about there. I expect it to be up next quarter. And yeah, as I said, I expect to knock off some more expired days.
Brilliant, Alex. That's really superb. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming back with all questions, because it actually helps provide good context. So if I do a question for Alex
Just give you one apology. I've just noted this morning I didn't update those graphs. So if anyone's know the graphs are up, I didn't push the button.
I went past the graphs, so I got some questions about the actual policy. So it's like, let's not get too worried about that. But thank you for acknowledging that. Any questions? A couple from me. Just to and they're not in any order of priority other than they have to be the first one. The significant engagement policy.
Yes.
I take it because it's in blue audit risk, it's going to come through this committee, correct?
Well, yes, it's packaged with the long-term plan policies, so it'll come through.
Yeah. Together. So these policies, which a lot of got June 24 there, including the ones that follow under the finance function, which are all related to particularly a long-term plan, although they're relevant to an annual plan. These timetables being rejigged.
They will be rejigged. I usually check in with Christina to update those, and that is still showing June because I didn't go on the same question.
We've got a big meeting next.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that by June 24. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't be up for hard work. I just want to reflect that we are fitting in with the time scale, and obviously with the adoption of an enhanced annual plan versus an LTP, there is probably a little difference there.
And just on significance and engagement policy, this committee did see, that last year. But what we will do is, we were ahead of the game, with that. That was sort of the only thing I felt we were ahead of the game with when we were doing the long-term plan. We will bring obviously that back to the committee, given that we have just done a whole lot of work on it and, you know, end of last year. I don't anticipate wholesale change on significance and engagement policy at this point, Alex. I think we'll have another look at it. But given it's already recently been refreshed, is that your understanding?
That's correct. We've been asked by both Okaha as our partner and some members of the community through the long-term plan to have a multi-participation framework as part of that work. We think that that is going to take the 3 years of an LTP cycle to develop, because we need to develop it in partnership. So it's unlikely to be ready for that one, but it is the evolution of that work.
So at the time that you feel relevant, I think it would be good for the committee to engage just with the refreshed policy. I mean, in a sense, when we've dealt with our Capex, we've really talked about communication and significance and engagement. It's just a form of communication. And I think we would be interested to see that, which would be great. Can I just ask a question, please, about the next one down? Don't worry, I'm not going to make this too long. Staff interest policy, where's that at? That's not one. Well, there's one that actually comes here, and it's one of those hygiene policies. Good to have in place, have it up to date. Know that we've got things captured, because otherwise we'll come back and bite us.
Yeah, I can speak to that one, Alex. It's on my whiteboard.
Okay. So to come to your room, Bill. Can I just encourage that?
Yeah.
It's not a biggie, but when it bites you and you haven't got the policy in place, or you haven't got the process for dealing with any declared staff interests, that's a problem. I take it we do have an existing policy in place.
We do. Yes.
Right, okay. So,
Yes.
I mean, probably it is being dealt with and managed appropriately.
Yeah.
But let's get this right, okay? Cool. You don't want to have to play out publicly that actually we're working with an out-of-date policy, even though it might still be effective. Okay, that's good. So look, and I assume where I see one or two that are past by date, I presume we've all got existing policies. Not too worried about that.
Tweak or two down there in the health and safety area that Parnasson discussed, and then I didn't come and update the dates.
Yeah.
We did just wonder on that, Bruce, we highlighted the LTP ones, where some of them, like the rates for emission policy, the rating policy and revenue and financing, do they need to be tied to an LTP year, and that will they need to wait until June next year, or?
They're all tied together into the LTP project and programmed and managed within Saskia's team. And Chrissy has the one scheduling and to come through as. Yes.
So what we can make minor amendments in an annual plan year, like on rates and emissions, and this committee and council thought, hey, we don't think that's no longer viable, but because it's so tight, although documents are so tight in our financial strategy, we don't tend to do wholesale changes in an annual plan year, unless of course there's something wrong with them and they're not working in practice. So the liability management policy was a really good example of that, when we realised that we didn't quite have that right, and we did bring that out of cycle actually to get that sorted. But yes, at this stage, there's no plans when we present those papers to you on the 26th of June to have done much with those policies, but they do need a fundamental refresh through the LTP, and they will all come to the.
So that it just sit there to align with the LTP. That's right.
That's why I said it should update.
Yeah.
I agree with what Cecily is saying, but actually you can change your policy, you can't right. It's just that it might, if it was a significant change, you would probably trigger your significant engagement policy, so you'd have to go through the work of changing that policy, which you would do with an LTP. So it's a convenience thing to be tied to the LTP because you're already consulting. Okay, cool. So a couple of questions which are totally outside my remit, but I'm just interested. So I'm just being nosy here, Alex. The district plan, which is a very interesting thing to call a policy in the first place.
It is on this list because it always has been. And
okay.
It is on an alternate timeframe ratified by council. More detail than that we need to bring in that today.
Okay.
I can talk to that.
Yeah, look, it's more just not, it was, Louise, it was just more just noting April 2008, so we're
So,
We're about 16 years, aren't we?
so we are reviewing, we've recently done a plan change for the whole residential section, plan change 19. We've been, when this council started, being, I'm going to say subjected to growth, we recognised that we actually need to deal with accommodating growth ahead of a lot of the other things in the district plan. So we put forward to council that we would do spatial planning. So this is in about maybe 2018, could be earlier, that we would do spatial planning and then out of that make changes to the operative plan so that appropriate levels of land were zoned and the provisions actually reflected what we needed to do. And since then, we've had RM reform do a whole circle.
Yes.
And effectively what we've done is save ourselves a lot of money because councils who have gone ahead and looked at Indigenous biodiversity and it's changed and it's stopped, it's been stretched out. So we're continuing to do spatial planning and making changes to our operative plan, but it's not actually called a district plan review because we're not looking at the whole, we're looking at the most important pieces.
So you essentially,
prioritising.
so what I'm hearing is, if I can put in my name's terms, the core aspects that the district plans can restress, i.e. growth, you've taken forth through this.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you'll come back when we've got a clarity on the RMA.
Yes.
Around the total.
Yeah, whenever that is.
Yeah. Yeah, look, just this is to the point of perhaps smaller. So I noticed there was a transportation procurement strategy.
Yes.
And I just wondered, why do we have a separate strategy for transport as in contrast to general procurement?
That's down in the road side.
Yeah. Why do we have a separate strategy for roading? Is it just because of the NZTA rules?
Yes, exactly. It is the Whakatahi NZTA rules, so that procurement strategy has to be endorsed by Whakatahi. So that is the document that roading must adhere to when procuring anything that's being co-funded.
Great, that's good to know. See, old dogs think of the new trucks. Thank you for that. That's me being the old dog, by the way. Look, my final question, Alex, was the health, safety and wellbeing management framework. Now that's operational in Peter.
Yes.
But it is within the belly look of my committee to be asking a question. What have we got that exists at the moment, and when will this one be nailed? Well, it's past the time actually, March 2024. Can you tell me what the story is, please?
Okay.
Yeah. Happy to answer that one, Bruce. So we do have a framework in draft format, and you're just developing a plan for the release of that, training people, and but it's been drafted and it's almost in its final format.
Great. Look, I appreciate, we careful about strategy versus operationalisation, but perhaps somebody on the track to be briefed about the framework. Much don't know, but we've got it out. I think the committee should be interested in getting what the framework looks like without it being necessarily need for us to approve. Very good.
And the one question you haven't asked me that will probably occur to you later.
I haven't finished yet.
I'll let you go and see.
No, you go for it. No, you go for it.
That is around that climate change risk assessment and work, and that is a ongoing operational piece. So Amelia and I are nearly at the end of assessing the known risk we know now against the plans and what we're doing, and then Dylan and I well into the next steps from that.
Brilliant. Hey, Alice, there's one thing from a risk perspective that's been on my personal agenda around my committees, but I couldn't help but note, so climate change is important to me, but actually the issue around particular disaster and the impacts of climate currently on us. I noticed under emergency management, there are a whole bunch of community response plans. They've got various renewal dates.
They do. We were actually asked by the committee previously to bring Derek and Jackie in, and we set it up, and then they had an emergency to go to. So I'll bring that back up to the top.
I'm doesn't have to be just under the Alex, but I am interested that when we look at our and just again not for this meeting, but our audit risk register review, we do have disaster as a concern. And this will be to know that we've got this one nailed. Because I think the reason I say that is that even since our last meeting, we've had the medical eye review, we've had another one from Mike Bush, Now, I know that's reflecting a national system, but it does reflect the stress that comes on, that has come on actively into local government in the last 18 months. I just think we should have a wee bit of a nosy at that from a central Otago perspective.
Love to do that. Let's do nosy.
Hey, so those are my questions. You guys, anything else you want to add to that?
But there is a dashboard, and I don't know if you have access to it, Alex, around staff capability and training in that space in terms of emergency management.
Yeah.
Whether we could see that, because I think Central Otago actually performs quite well in terms of.
Not that you're biased.
Not that I know. It's always nice to see how much better we are than other councils.
So let's come back to that, just ever so briefly when we get to the PX and Wellbeing risk, but it does just reflect that I think, given the national environment for emergency management is stressed and under change, we should anticipate and look forward. So that's it. And yes, if we're up to speed on this one, Tamar, that's good. Otherwise, we'll have to get people in here and hold them to account.
Bruce, if I could just jump in. So I lead the emergency management portfolio for the council. What it might be helpful is if we come in with Derek and Jack or maybe Matt and just do a bit of a briefing.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to reflect on. I'm wanting to reflect. It's not so much the hassle Alex here about our policy. It's more actually about addressing our strategic risks.
Yeah, well,
I'd love to do that.
As you've identified, there's a lot of new information coming to hand recently.
Yeah.
We're taking into account, so things are moving.
Yeah, good. No, we're on the same page. That's great. So I got excited about the register this time round, Alex. So here we go. We're totally got it up to date. So that's good. And thank you that in that overview sense that you're confident and the numbers are showing that this is better and more under control. So the recommendation is we received the report seems to be a week given the total good hard work that you've done. So thank you for that. We've got from Chair. I've got Tamo's hand up first. Well, you've given up, Tracy, haven't you? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Agreed.
So it was nice, we can't be waiting for Tracy to. Tight time. Let's put Sandy here. So let's see. Okay, can we move to the expenditure policies, please? Hi.
So we've got 3 expenditure policies in you today, for your recommendation of the council to adopt these revised policies. So the first one is the sensitive expenditure policy, which has been reviewed, and we identified just some minor changes, some clarifications and general updates, none of which impact the intent or the implementation of that policy, and hopefully just makes it more easy to understand by readers, and aligns with the Office of the Auditor General's guidelines for sensitive expenditure, which is one of those outstanding audit actions. The travel policy, again, the same. We've made some minor changes. What we have done in here is include a maximum daily allowance for food expenses when travelling. And again, that reflects the Office of the Auditor General's guidelines to make sure that we do have a dollar limit, because we know that reasonable can be interpreted differently by few people. And we've also removed the requirement of carbon offsetting to be ticked every time we book a flight. And that doesn't reflect that we've changed our position on carbon offsetting. We're still very committed to reducing our carbon emissions, but we think we can invest better in the work that we are doing internally, that we can manage and monitor appropriately, rather than kind of ticking a box and paying some money and not really knowing what happens after that. And the credit card policy, again, minor changes. We've just aligned that with the other 2 policies, and hopefully made that one a little bit clearer as well, where that was required. Are there any questions?
Just point out that questions. Just with the maximum daily allowance, it's going to be reinforced through our executive team. It's not a target. So we do expect people to be quite prudent when they are travelling, and obviously look for cheap options when it's available. And sometimes, if you are I think, Mayor and CEO, you know, when they are going to like formal dinners and stuff, there's only one option, you know, that they're going for. So we did need to reflect it under the guidelines, but definitely, for general staff, we're not encouraging them to go out for $120 dinner.
I didn't buy it. Breakfast.
I did actually have a question on that, and, we'd like to eat anyway. So I kind of, to me, it feels a little bit like, I mean, I get it, but it is, you know, if you have to eat, you have to eat. It's not like you're not going to be spending money on food regardless. I personally thought that was quite high, and I may have missed it, but was there any reference to that does not include buying a glass of wine, and that will be on your own account?
So there is an example, yeah. But I think that's a really good point. I think just to be noted.
Sorry being mean, if anyone thinks that I'm really mean. Tracy is over here.
You know, we do have, you know, staff on lower incomes that we do require to go away for professional travel, who would normally bring in their lunch. So for them, in terms of additional expense, it can be quite tough. And if we didn't have a policy like this, it might mean they say to us, I can't afford to go to the training. But hence why ELT will reinforce it's not a target, just an amount of money.
And it also does state that if like catering is provided, then we
Yes,
wouldn't be on
absolutely.
top of that either.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
often when people are at courses, at least would be
Yeah.
provided. So we would expect to see that, like Saskia says, that we'll see much lower amounts.
Yeah.
But we've accounted for the fact that sometimes people are in places where things are more expensive, or, you know, there are dinners that they're required to attend for various reasons that do have slightly.
Cheap coffee and Wellington, let me know, I'll tell them to go. Get a good long back, 350 in Wellington, believe it or not. Won't be not advertised the place, but it's here, but it's.
Yeah, I know the place you're talking about. It's good.
Yeah. Okay, that's useful. Any other questions or comments? So, sorry, Tracy, not to reflect, not meanness, to reflect your question. Clearly, there needs to be a review of actually how the policy is working, which would include that actually we are finding, you know, all claims are coming out, you know, your target being met, so to speak. So I presume somebody on the track there will be a review of whether this is working.
I do have a question in relation to the credit card, because we're dealing with, I take it all together. With the why 2 months for the credit card privileges? Why do they have to be reported on within 2 months? Why not 1 month?
That's, now, this is actually guarantee, this will be a nice surprise for you all. This is a new addition, as you'll be aware. And we are trying to be a wee bit lenient. A month would be ideal, Tracy, but we put in 2 months, knowing that sometimes we have staff who have credit cards away, and some of us are very fortunate. We have EAs that will get it all together for our signature. So sometimes workload does impede on that. But I take your point, it should be more timely than 2 months. The 2 months is if we haven't done it in 2 months, there's a conversation happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Once again, now I feel mean into it.
Yeah.
I can feel the daggers coming.
Yeah. No, it's a good question, because we should, for those, because it is an area of fraud and risk as credit cards. So you're absolutely right. They should be up through ELT in the monthly end and through to our accountants as soon as we can. Yeah.
Which is generally the case.
Right, yeah.
I do that diligence.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? I don't really want to ask it, for reasons which may become obvious. We say we have a one-up rule for the approval of credit cards, and yet we are placing the deputy mayor and the group manager business support as the signatories on the mayor's sensitive expenditure.
Yeah.
Which is potentially unfair on the deputy mayor and the corporate services manager.
So I excuse me, I also questioned that when reviewing this policy. And we had a really good conversation around why that actually makes sense. So it creates a loop. So when you look at everyone who's involved in that, no one is approving each other's expenditure. So the mayor doesn't approve the deputy mayors. Therefore, having the deputy mayor approve the mayors with also an additional internal council approval means that there can be no kind of quid pro quo. I'll approve yours if you approve mine, and away we go to.
You mentioned the OAG, you mentioned the OAG standards, if is that what they would recommend is, Josh?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Good. The reason I said it in the last was actually often the chair of the audit committee has to sign them off, which it's the one problem with my job. Okay, then can I just look at page 66? Look at there's a little spelling anomaly there, or it's a word I don't understand. Yes, so this is coming back to the alcoholic drinks thing. Must not be charged to central targets without pre-approval. But then if you look down into the blue, the new stuff, we say the tourism secretary team may purchase blah, blah, blah. Then the brackets got such as.
Well, the mills, apologies, that is internal slang.
So, yeah, the form is familiarisation.
Oh, okay. Which is when you're understanding. I've been something to people who read policy, right? For mills, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask that question, I might have shown my age, it's being out of touch with the really. Anyway, so there we go, okay.
Just on that, the TCO team are often showcasing wines and beers in the region, so they do have an exemption when they are, as part of their work, doing a famil, that they don't have to get that pre-approval. Of course, it all still gets seen by the CEO, just means the rest of us have to ask Peter first. Authorised just.
Seriously, had no trouble with the exemption, I just don't understand the words, so I'm sort of half right, but you guys are more right than me. Okay, so the recommendations are we receive and accept the legal of submitment. And we recommend to council the adoption of these 3 policies. I'm happy to move that. Thank you, Grace. I got that. That's good. Radio, I'll put the motion all over the paper, please say aye. Those against? Gary, thank you very much. Fred. ICT service provider management policy. Man, this is great, this one.
So, yes, ICT service provider management policy is a new policy. This is based on a recommendation from Elgin local government cybersecurity program. They introduced 70 new controls back in April 2023. Many of these controls relate to ensuring council is appropriately managing all ICT service providers. The policy sets the foundation for doing that at council. Policy applies not just to cloud providers such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, but also managed service providers or general ICT providers. The implementation of this policy will take multiple years due to the range and maturity of ICT service providers utilised. A planned review of all applications and services will greatly assist this. This is currently scheduled to start in July 24. I have also sought feedback from staff that utilise providers, ICT service providers already on the policy. The policy is basically to identify and document all ICT service providers, define and document the requirements of each provider, classify each provider, assess the provider on a regular basis that they're being compliant with our requirements, make sure that the onboarding of that provider is streamlined, that we monitor the provider in terms of their various systems, and when we need to decommission a provider, that we retire it appropriately. Open to questions.
Sorry, Nathan, this is really excellent. I don't say that lightly on. I think it's an area we could glaze over. So I'd like to start with a couple of questions, or that's okay, or I open up further. Partly because I'm not a digital native, too old. Just can you characterise for me in a CODC context, what's infrastructure as a service versus platform versus software as a service?
So infrastructure as a service would be servers, for example, where workloads sit.
Yeah.
Platform as a service is typically a service where you develop applications, software, and then software as a service is that we are providing, purchasing a service provider that is already developed an
So
application.
just what would be an example of a platform?
Typically, council does not get involved in platforms. Platforms as a service. We do have platforms as such that are a range of software as a service.
Yeah, offering more software as a service in contrast to platform. Brilliant. Okay, well, just only one actually, I'll get my one point out. I noticed the application of this policy, which again is really important, includes contractors. The only reason I want to raise this is that I have to notice under the expenditure policy, we had a definition of a contractor. And we don't have one in this policy as far as I'm concerned. I just wonder whether we should, well, I just wonder whether we should add to the definitions section what a contractor is, so it's clear for any of our contractors that they're called by the policy.
Yep, I can do that.
Minor point, but I've just added in there. Great, I've got questions for Nathan here on the policy.
It's all just terrifying, really, this.
It's Easter. Very thankful for Nathan.
Yeah.
Very thankful.
There's a high level of trust coming.
I'm comfortable with it. So in that case, I'm going to move that we receive Nathan's report, which effectively means we are agreeing that this looks a lot of sense to me, and I think about the second, please. Thank you, Tony. I'll put the motion wise in favour, please say aye. Those against, it's carried. Brilliant. Thanks, Cecily. Best luck. Can I move us to the health, safety and wellbeing report, please? So the great, thank you.
Okay, like the report is read, just want to highlight a few things. So lead indicators, so ELT have adopted 5 lead indicators I talked about last time. So focusing on further improving our reporting culture, as well as focusing on critical risks in terms of driving and contractor management. So I've included a dashboard to indicate where we are tracking with those, but that's without promoting what those measures are. I've started to socialise that with the organisation, and I think the results indicate, I think, that it is the right measures in terms of us not achieving a lot of those measures. It's been clear that was for it to be a bit of a stretch target at the same time. Security review, so that's the other initiative that was underway in the last quarter. So we're working through the recommendations from just an external consultancy, security consultancy called Audit, which has done a security review of the service centre and the swimming centre in Alexandra. And so we're working through the recommendations from those. In terms of incident reporting, so we are seeing, although the overall number of aggressive behaviour incidents remain relatively low, we are seeing more incidents being reported, especially in the service centre. So the security review, for example, did highlight the importance of CCTV security cameras, which is an initiative that's underway. And that would assist in terms of investigating those particular incidents and help with monitoring if it turns into an emergency situation. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, by the way, for the report. I found this report, and I see the different versions, but this has given me a good sense of what's happening here. So I appreciate the effort that's gone into it. So if I have any questions to answer this.
Yeah, I have a question just in, I guess, in relation to travel to and from work. Are we captured in that? Now, there's 2 aspects. One, I guess, when we're driving a company vehicle to and from work, or if they're driving a personal vehicle. And is that, how is that captured? Is it captured?
In terms of company vehicles, so the council vehicles will remain here, so we wouldn't.
Or if a team member has got a company car?
Capture, so that, use of those.
Well, I guess as in, like, if, for example, if they have an accident on their way to work.
Yeah.
How far does our duty of care extend
Normally,
outside of work hours? And does it?
if it's a council car or company car, then there's probably a duty of care there. But it's, so, there would be, but for other people driving into work and back, it's when they arrive at work. And when they leave work, that duty of care probably would end.
Okay. And would that be similar, that would be the same for our contractors, do you think?
Contractors would have their own. No, I don't think it would extend that far for contractors.
Okay. It was just a thought that I was having in relation to how far does that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking through your questions in terms of, so if someone had an accident driving their own vehicle on their way to work, that wouldn't be considered by ACC as a work-related accident. It would be non-work related.
Okay.
I had that happen at Treasury a few years ago, and that's in a work car, and it was classed as work on the way to work. It wasn't on the mountain, it was on the public road. But it was classed as work.
But you're.
It's because it's a work provided vehicle, it counts as when you clock on and clock off. Essentially, and getting into a work vehicle is putting yourself in a work environment, and they class that as when you start work. So for that level vehicle, it was work. But if you go and work and your job is predominantly to be in the workplace, then that's when you start. So it's around when you deem to be starting work. And not a bit grey, but ACC accepted that as a workplace.
And to add to that, generally speaking, the council vehicles is kind of set it parked up unless someone might be on call, for example, say a water project or our property manager, could be working through something or potentially something happening on the weekend. Then apart from that, unless there's another arrangement through the employee, the council cars stay there.
Okay, I was just making sure that, I guess just from a policy perspective, and making sure that we were covered if, like what you say, it actually becomes a work, even though you're technically not on the clock until you get to it, but if you're driving a vehicle.
Yes, it's basically owned by a section, right? Those staff people have a vehicle.
The manager rule from the manager. Yeah.
Thank you.
There is a potentially, and I'd say this with authority nouns, but I think our contractors may be in some different position. I mean, I'm aware of it, something I don't want to comment on, but contractors driving to work clearly, again, when we be company trucks and vehicles have been serious accidents, and it becomes a work safe. Regardless of whether it's ACC or not. So if it's a combined PC, well, that's the question. When it's a combined PCB, you click and when it doesn't. I don't know. I'm not authoritative in that, but it is an area to watch. And I would assume when we're onboarding a contractor, there's clarity around those sorts of responsibilities in terms of when does it kick in and when it doesn't. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, Tracy. Through the question. Yes, Tim.
And just one around the aggressive behaviour and in the escalating of the aggression within the aggression behaviour. Are we recording that in any way? Like the level of violence towards it still falls within that aggressive behaviour, but I think that's kind of increasing. Is that measured in the same way?
You mean if it's more than verbal abuse, for example, or?
I guess the level of aggression within the verbal abuse.
So seeing more incidents occurring and things like that.
I'm just seeing the level of it.
Yeah.
The level and the escalation of it, as opposed to just, I can't afford to pay my rates, or, to becoming, so it still falls within that category. It's not then moving into physical violence, it's still within that verbal aggression, but the level of the verbal aggression increasing.
Yeah.
Is that recorded?
I think there's more work for us to do. So I started with training. We had the first session yesterday, just talking to the organisation in terms of what kind of incidents we want to see reported. So we've included anything that happens on social media, for example, whether it's verbal aggression or insults. Same with if it's in person over the phone, just to make it clear we can't understand the level of risk if we don't have the data to indicate what the level of risk is. And then I think you would have seen from the last few reports, it's the number of incidents being reported has kind of been constant, stable. But what I'm hearing sometimes is that there's more of these incidents happening, but it's just making people aware to report those, so we actually understand whether are we getting more, is it more than just verbal aggression, is it becoming more physical, is it turning more into threats, so to understand that risk.
Do we have a lot of repeat flyers in that category?
Yes, we also want to start capturing that in terms of, and then working on a procedure for that in terms of how do we, if it's a particular person that's displaying that behaviour on a regular basis, how do we communicate with that person in the future that might only be in writing as opposed to in person.
And I guess on that, I can't remember the exact title, but that helped me here, but we're working through like a fair and reasonable complaints policy and what happens when that sort of escalates outside what might be fair and reasonable, and we might deal with that as an organisation. And then just back to the first piece around recording how things are escalating, the way we recorded incidents, I'm just thinking of one that I sort of got escalated through to me because I guess the severity of it. But we, try not to put too much into our incident reporting, but enough that we all understand what's going on. And it might start with such and such came in. They were unhappy about something. I accidentally spelled their name wrong, and that escalated into something else. And so I guess, from an incident per incident, I guess, reporting line, we're sort of capturing it there as well. So, which is helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions? Just a couple from me, Nance. I'm always interested about critical risks and where we're at. I probably should be able to often go, yes, but can you just tell me one of the critical risks is biological hazards, and it probably is the one that we have the highest number on at the moment. Just characterise biological hazards, which are chemicals and plastic plant.
So those are the what we call go grounds and the swimming centre. So
all.
That's the main.
I should not get as a hazard actually, but that's essentially what it is.
Yeah. Kids are in that pool below.
Yeah, and you essentially got to get everybody else, and I mean, I've been here for about 18 months, and I think we're about to run this campaign for the second time. We see ebbs and flows of this. Sometimes for us that have kids, there's a lot of things and bugs going around right now that does translate into to biohazards. So, and so we do try to remind people, making sure that you are doing things to take your kids to the toilet before, making sure that you've got a swim nappy and change it regularly if you're going for a long swim and things like that. But, and I think educating the community too, because it is quite a high cost to the community. So, for example, if we have to evacuate the pool during the swim lesson, on average, we'll probably have to refund about $400 worth of swim lesson for that period of time, and then plus everything else that goes into that. So, I guess the more we can educate and keep it front and centre about this, the better it is for everyone.
Okay, great. That's fine. Thank you for that. You're not ready. Just with the wellbeing indicators, always interested to understand the presenting issues. I've just reread it, so I think it's now got. I think I now understand it. That actually it said workplace stress was the number one work-related themes, but actually they were only presenting work-related themes. In fact, they just sent it to cases. So that there's no there's no number that should make me, take the thought off people about being concerned. It is helpful to note that that 62% is personal matters rather than work-related matters. And I appreciate it's probably limited to what you can do there in terms of that, but that's helpful to know. Thank you for the advice on what you're doing. It's very helpful. Any other questions at this stage? Thank you for that, Hans. Appreciate that. Can we get move to the recommendation? Is it? Would you like to move this? Who's in there the first? Thank you. There we are. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Very nice. Report. I always find it's difficult to know what a chair should say at this situation, and it may be that in future you might want to give me some indications as to what you have to hear. What I want to reflect is really from my experience elsewhere in the sector, that, and we'll get to this when we get to the quarterly risk update as well. The general risk profile of the sector is heightened. I noticed, for instance, in Hans's report, you have those what you call stretch measures, and we're in that, we're outside our comfort zone. And broadly speaking, most council are outside their comfort zone. If they had a typical number of high risks, strategic risks, perhaps 10 or 12, at least 4 or 5 of those will be in an area that you might say red, where you start to get worried. You start to think, are we doing enough? Should we be devoting more resources? The critical thing at the moment is that I'm seeing in terms of risk is that often we are dependent on other players. I can call it that. So, whether that's we're waiting on the NZTA to know what our rating budget's like, what we can plan for, whether we're relying on actually what are the final arrangements around waters going forward, whether we're reliant on are our neighbours prepared to clear to us over 3 waters, and the form is actually pretty helpful at the moment. And so I am at this point, I guess, wanting to recognise at the point of cold comfort, members, if you're feeling that, you're in good company. But I don't have any keys and solutions at this stage. I mean, it's hard work. It's hard work being a councillor, and can I say, given staff here as well, it's kind of hard being a staff member in this environment in terms of providing advice. The only other thing I would want to acknowledge here is we have sidestepped the LTP right at the moment. That's not to say the annual plan is difficult, but it does mean actually we have placed ourselves under some stress. We've got to deal with the LTP next year in effect. Louise, I don't know what the plans are in terms of trying to rock through it. The more we could do pre-Christmas, the better. Yeah. What I've been wanting to argue from a minimising the impact stress risk on the organisation, because the stress I see it in the new year will be around water safety plans. In other words, what's our way to sustain a water 3 waters? Louise, you might have some views on that.
Well, we are developing the plan, and we'll be in September time really ramping up onto the management plan. So yeah, we do have a detailed program, so we are aware of that.
Yeah. So I'm not being critical, by the way, that we've gone with enhancing the plan. I understand the background to that, but I'm wanting to reflect that it does mean the pressure on us is elongated. So that becomes really important. But that's all I want to do. So perhaps it'd be, well, it's a perfect way to smooth the line for figures. Board secretary, please think exactly. I'm saying, well, I think you guys will raise
No, maybe.
Not, we'll come up with.
Reiterate.
You have 6.
Sarah, anything you want to raise from your perspective?
It's interesting reading some of these thoroughly now, like segments after, but it's actually a different level of understanding and start reading it.
Right. Look, I'm conscious that we should probably have a short break. What have we got to go? Governance report. And that's it. And then we're, so I think perhaps we just try and rock through, get to that short break there. Thanks. Well, I see that you even said 11:20. Well, I should read my agenda. That's great. Okay, so we just go to the governance report. Wayne, want to give us a short heads up, please?
Well, there's two things in there, just some, status updates, which I think we'll go for those. Then the other thing is, so we started up a forward work program. I'm interested in feedback as to what you think could be added or subtracted or anything. We did have a forward work program previously, so we just started it up again. So I'll look for any feedback on it. Especially if we're missing anything. You know, like something that's glaring.
Yeah. Look, no, that's really good. Wayne's given me the benefit of seeing this, and I said I'm really pleased that we're starting to get back, like you're saying, returning to this sort of idea. What does the annual plan look like? And I'd be keen to it. So, members, there are two bits here. There's obviously the essentially looks like the actions are. With I saw the risk status update report essentially closed, Wayne.
Yeah, those two are closed. I mean, they've been to wherever they needed to go.
Yeah.
And so they're done.
So when we're going to add to this list of what our forward work program is, and I think we can signal there's already a couple of things, which is that actually on an appropriate basis, we want to get a capital report from the team. I will be talking about, and I think Stone, you were talking about, perhaps we wanted what is called a deep dive into the organisation management value. We need to, in my view, develop a routine at each of these meetings of having succession of deep dives.
Yeah.
And it seems like even down here, we've got the session with Slade around insurance. That should be a regular feature on our work program, both at a time of setting strategy around our insurance, because it's about risk allocation, and actually when the placement occurs. So we're going to add to this as we carry on, and we've already had good discussions. I'll see if they have a couple of things to go, but at this stage, for what's there, I'm comfortable. Members, do you want to add to that, please? Right, in that case, I'll move to the report we received, being contained. All those in favour, please. Those against, carried. So we have dealt with the government report. We've dealt with New Zealand, and the date of the next meeting, Wayne, 4th October. Thank you. We weigh out. It's a month slightly longer than that's the filling of their annual report timeline.
The annual report.
Yeah, because we should be looking to deal with the annual report at that stage. So we'll just keep that under watch, because it is a slightly longer break than I perhaps am used to, but I also want us to be efficient if we can as well. We move to page 127. Which is the resolution to exclude the public. Got a whole bunch of stuff here. I've gone through it and I'm comfortable that we deal with that in public excluded. So I'll move the motion for the reason stated. These items we should have run to public excluded. I don't think there's anybody particularly left to approve being here on this week's stays, which is fine. Okay. I'm sorry, I haven't seen the please. Thank you, Chris. Please say aye.
My chat was going to go then. That's how excited I was to say, please.
Before we break, seeing I've been told it's 11:20, let's just do the minutes really fast. So the 8th of March, we've got it there. I'm going to move there, the Thrill Direct Record seconder.